Hey, everybody. Thanks again for logging into DC Startup Week. Our afternoon session's kicking off here. We have a fantastic speaker today, Ramli John, who is the current director of content at AppQs, which is a growth stage startup. He's also a mentor for First Round Capital and First Round Fast Track program, which is pretty prestigious and awesome. And he's also the author of a book called Product Led Onboarding, and is a educator over at the Product Led Institute. I've known Ramli for a while now and have found him to be one of the most interesting thought leaders in the product led space. And I think you'll walk away with some really, really great tips and strategies that you can likely start putting to use for your own products now. And Ramli, really appreciate your time today. And I'm going to hand it off to you in a second. And I would also say to the audience that feel free to drop questions in live. When I've seen Ramli do these sessions, they're usually very interactive. So please ask your questions along the way, and we'll go from there. So without further ado, Ramli, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that warm introduction, Greg. I really do appreciate it. For everybody else who invited me as well. Let's just jump in and Drew just shared some information around this. And just let me share my screen here. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about how to accelerate your product adoption for new users. And particularly, I'm really, want to make this interactive. As Craig said, if you have any questions or chat, I'm going to ask you to interact with the chat here in a little bit. But I'm sorry I couldn't make it in person there. I would love to, but as Craig mentioned here, I had a baby 9 weeks ago. Me and my wife welcomed our first boy, Zane. This is me looking as shocked as a first time dad. I was like, what the heck am I doing? They're just giving me this baby to take home. I've never had a baby in my life. First one. And they're just gonna let me go after a day. No manual, no product tour, no onboarding to becoming a dad. So I would love to be there. Hopefully next year we can make it happen, and I can do this in person as I create more content and materials here. But I'm super excited to be here regardless. I'm really excited. Me, my wife, my dog, and my newborn are super excited that I'm here. I'm going to be sharing with you some really, really actually new stuff. That since last time I joined here, this is going to be slightly new that I've done. As Craig mentioned, I'm the content director at AppQs. I've also wrote a book called. Thank you so much for everybody who's chiming in. Thank you. If you have any tips about becoming a dad or a parent, find me on Twitter at Ramli John on LinkedIn as well. Like I said, my name is Ramli John. I'm director of content at AppQs. I also wrote this book called Product Led Onboarding with Wes Bush, who is the CEO of Product Led. I coach at Product Led. I'm a mentor at First Track, which is pretty prestigious VC firm. Today, I'm going to be talking about how to accelerate new users to adopting your product and really why it's so important. Then I'm going to be sharing 5 examples of how to accelerate. I call boosters, as well as, like I said, feel free to chime in. Actually, while we're here, can everybody just drop in where you're tuning in from right now while you're watching this? I'm from Toronto, Canada. I'd love to see it in the chat. There is a welcome. I see you dropped your LinkedIn and your information there. So just type in the chat exactly where you're from. Washington, D.C., Craig. Probably a lot of folks here from D.C. right now. This is not a fair question.
You know what? This is remote, so there's a lot of people from outside too, I think. But we'll see.
Interesting. Okay, that's fair. Well, awesome. Thank you for sharing a little bit. Let's jump in, and let me start off with a story. Actually, I'm sharing a lot about my family. Let me introduce you to my other family member here, my brother. This is my younger brother. I'm the oldest out of 3 kids, and when I was like 8 or 9, we both got super addicted with Super Mario Kart. If you're not familiar with this, you get to pick a character from Mario, Luigi, Yoshi, Princess, Copa and other folks like that, and you race around this track, and really like yeah, like Greg said, this game is fun. And there was something that just frustrated me. Like I don't understand why my brother Mark, my younger brother Mark, if I'm the oldest, I'm supposed to be the one winning. I don't understand why he kept winning, and this is just me frustrated. This is not me frustrated while playing the game, but regardless, this is the emotion I felt whenever I lost to him. And he told me, "Hey, Kuya. Kuya means older brother in Filipino. Kuya, here's how I keep beating you." And he told me like there's actually two things you want to watch out for. The first ones are called boosters. Those are things that accelerate and help you win against your competitors. Some of these boosters include turbo start, which are when you're on the beginning of the line, you press the right button and then you accelerate to the front of the line. There's the zipper booster. Those are ones that are on the ground, and if you run over it, you'll go faster than everybody else. And there's actually shortcuts. I didn't notice like some areas in the race course, it looks like uh, it looks like a wall or it looks like it's just dirt. But if you cut through it, there's actually a shortcut that gets you in front of the line. Those are the boosters. And then on the other end are blockers. Those are things that you want to avoid. So things like oil spills on the ground and banana peels that will make you spin out, and obviously potholes where if you fall in, you're gonna have to restart slightly behind. So these are what they call momentum boosters and blockers, and how this relates to your product, whether you have a SaaS or mobile app, is your users are on a journey, and I want to share with you this product led flywheel. Essentially, this is the journey that you users are going through as they go through this motion of trying to become a happy paying customer and champion of your product. In the beginning, they're evaluators. For example, with Uber, the first time, how many of you remember the first time you used Uber? I bet you were very skeptical. I remember my mom told me, Ramley, why would you jump into somebody else's car? They might be a serial killer. My mom thinks everybody's a serial killer. So you're very skeptical. Your users, when they try out your product for the first time, they're evaluating this product if it's good for their life, their use case, their workflow. As they sign up for it, they become a beginner. This is when they experience the value of your product for the first time. Finally, then as they become habitual in the usage of your product, they become regular users. And from there, as they share, for example, with Uber, once I've started using it over and over enough times, I told my mom, most of the Uber drivers are not serial killers. They're actually super friendly. And that's when I become a champion. I start telling people about it. The same thing with your product. Eventually you want your regular users to be advocates, to share about this, and to become champions of your product to people around. That's really when this whole cycle can really pick up, and that's the product-led flywheel that I use when I coach people who are implementing product-led growth into their business. Now, with this whole motion, what's really important is to make sure you understand that where the lever is, where the greatest impact is through this whole user journey, this flywheel, is in the onboarding. The data backs it. According to Profitwell, they did a study in 2019 where they looked at 500 different types of businesses, and time again across 3 weeks, 6 weeks, and 9 weeks after somebody signs up, having a positive onboarding experiences, it really impacts retention. They become regular users, and that retention turns into champions. This is where the lever really is in terms of that journey that you're in. And unfortunately, for a lot of products, think about the products that you all sign up for. A majority of new users remain as evaluators. They get stuck. They get blocked. They get caught up. They get distracted. There's too much frictions. The data shows 75% of SaaS users sign up once and they don't come back again. And this is something that we've seen at AppQs with a lot of the products we work with, as well as if you're in the B2C space, particularly in mobile app, you even have it worse. Like 95% of people who sign up for a mobile app actually don't stay around for very, very long. Like within 90 days, they deleted your app from your product. And we have very limited time to really capture this. There's this data from Mixpanel that within 1 day, the people who have signed in have left, right? Like, for SaaS, it's 60 to 70%. When it's e-commerce, it's even worse. Like 80 to 90% of users have come to your site and they will never come back again over the days. So really, what's really important here is try to make sure that we are, boosting our users and oiling that path for our users. And that's where the concept that I want to share with you today, uh, uh, you know, to accelerate that product adoption, to accelerate our evaluators and users to become regular users. We want to think about two things. We want to think about, first of all, how do we identify momentum boosters and really place that into the path so that they accelerate the adoption of your product, as well as how do we remove momentum blockers and make sure that they are not getting in the way and they're spinning out and getting frustrated and pulling their hair out throughout all that situation. And that's where this concept called momentum accounting or momentum audit comes in. This is a very powerful exercise. Usually the companies that I coach with, I walk them through this. It takes about 2 to 3 hours when we do it in person or live, but I'm going to just give you a brief overview of it. Essentially, it's a 3-step process to audit your experience, your in-app experience, to really identify which ones are blockers and which ones are boosters. So the very first step that I do is to write down every step that evaluators of your product need to do to become regular users. And if it's in person, I prefer, if your team is in person, you'd use post-it notes, and every step is a post-it note, and then you would just map it out across the wall. If you're remote, like we're doing right now, remote, you can use Trello or Asana or Mural or Notion to make every card a step into your to your experience. And when I say step, every field is its own card or post-it note. Every button click. So we want to have an overview of, like, okay, it takes 87 steps or 23 steps for evaluators of my product to become regular users. That's the first step. After you've done that, the second step is to start vetting the process every step. So I use a red, yellow, and green system where red is a blocker. These are ones that are unnecessary for your users and should be eliminated. Second are yellow. These are neutral. This doesn't add, or it doesn't block, or it doesn't boost the product adoption. In those cases, those ones you can probably introduce later in the user journey. The very last one are green. These are boosters. These are ones that are critical steps that actually accelerate your user from adopting your products. And you want to do this individually. If you're doing this with a team, you want to do this individually first. The reason why is often what happens when you're in a team setting. I find there's a concept called hippo, where the highest paid person is the one who becomes outspoken. And for introverts like me, we get overpowered by extroverts. So by doing this individually first, you will be able to hear from everybody and really get their point of view, no matter their, whether they're introverts or extroverts, or whether they take a little bit longer or less time. Once you have that, what you want to do is now have a discussion. This is where it gets interesting, because what matters to somebody might not matter to you, and they might have data points like user insights that you might not have, or the data analyst might have data around where things are going. And essentially you want to have an agreement as to, do we have all the boosters here that we need? Have we eliminated anything that we should place back? And should we eliminate any blockers, more blockers that we see? This is the 3-step. Very simple, but it's very powerful. Let me give you a case study of this applied by a company called Snappa. It's somebody that we worked, West Bush and I worked with a few years ago. Snappa is an easy way to create any kind of images, whether that's social media for Instagram, ads, images for your blogs. So you do it in a snap, so you don't need any design skills. You don't need to know Photoshop. You can use one of the templates. for them, the first, one of the first things that they want to try to get the users is to create a design and to download it. So that's, that's a first step for evaluators to become beginners. I just want to give you a small overview. I think you want to do this all the way to becoming a regular user in that journey. Wes and I have decided, simple flow to the step for free. Fill out the name, very similar to Canva. Yeah, you're right. Fill out the email, fill out the password, go to the inbox, click verify on the email, select a design template, add your own pictures, edit the design, and then download the design. These are very simplified, so just for this exercise. But one thing we talked to with the CEO, Christopher's like, hey, this step feels like it's a blocker. And how many of you have gotten an email like this? Like, please verify your email. Is this a booster or a blocker? It really depends. Okay, so I'm seeing Craig say blocker right away. What do you think? One or two? Well, one for booster or two for blocker. So Alexandra said blocker. You can just type two. Yeah. So okay. He said it's a booster. Interested. Is this a blocker? All right. So Rajiv said it's a blocker. It often it is. There are situations like financial, banking, or instruments like that. Security may say I think it's not. It's set security for you, especially if it's a bank app. Or like something really valuable to you. You probably want to add this in. But in this particular use case for Snapple, when people want to create the design, they want to do it right now. And we talked to a few users. That was one thing we kept hearing over and over again was right now. We want it now. We want the design now. We want the ad design now. We want that social media post now. And for Snappa's type of user, they are very impatient, and any kind of blocker for them, any kind of things like this really does make an impact. So we suggested to Christopher, hey, let's do a split test, make sure that we remove this, see what happens. We understand there's risk of spam for sure. What if there's technology around that we can figure out later, but let's just see the impact to the revenue. And then we did a split test, and within a few weeks, what we found was there was definitely so we marked those steps as red, going back to the system that we have, this process, this momentum accounting. And right away we found that there was a major improvement in terms of their MRR. And just because the users who want Snappa want it now, and any kind of blocker and really limit the adoption of the product here. And really, I think the lesson here that I want to share with you is not remove your email verification right away. Once again, it depends on your users. But the question I want to leave you for this first part is which steps in your user journey are blocking product adoption? Think about that for a second. Doing this approach, this momentum accounting approach, helps you identify with insight from users as well as data what is boosting product adoption as well as what is blocking product adoption. And this is the name of the game that we're in, because many people are very, very impatient. A lot of us are. So that's what I want to share with you in this first part. I just want to pause for a second to see if there's any questions before I share with you 5 common boosters that I found reviewing like 100 different kind of user onboarding experiences. So feel free to unmute yourself, drop it in the questions in the chat. I'm gonna pause for 1 second. See, Larissa said, phishing practice, email. Like I said, if security is important, especially email, I think email for MailChimp or any kind of tool, verify the email. Like I was working at an email marketing company once, and we were getting spammed by like Russian bots who were creating accounts to send spam emails. So if you're working for an email marketing company, I would suggest verifying the email just because of that. What about visit bounces? That's a really good point. I can bring up an example. I wish I brought it up because that is a really good example with what if the email is fake. One example I really like is I would suggest checking out how monday.com does their email verification. Is what they do is when you sign up for it, you put in a fake email, like I do whenever I sign up for an onboarding experience. Put in a fake email because I don't want emails from the sales team. What they do is when you're in, they actually try to ping it, and then while you're trying out, they show a bar at the top. Hey Ramley, we noticed your email bounce. Is this the right email? So that's a good way to verify that the email's working without like blocking everything there. So that's a really good question there. Thank you for asking that. Hope that answers your question. If there are any more questions, feel free to keep putting in the chat. I'm gonna move forward and share with you the 5 common boosters, momentum boosters that I found. And the very first one I want to share with you is around delightful moments, and I'm really identifying that. Now, there are the moments in your product where your users' eyes light up, and this only comes when you talk to your users and really, see where moments of, I call eyes light up moments, or when their eyes like, wow. An example I can think of here, and obviously delightful moments is quite obvious, but it's not necessarily that obvious. An example here is with Wave Apps. Here's an example as part of their onboarding experience. Wave Apps helps entrepreneurs and business owners to create invoices to send to the clients that are beautiful and on brand and easy. And one of the steps they ask you to do is to upload a logo. Upload a logo. So let's play this game again. Type 1 in the chat if you think this is a booster, and then type 2 in the chat if you think this is a blocker. Just type. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Is this a blocker for you users? Rajiv said this is a booster. Anybody thinks this is a blocker? Upload a logo. Upload a logo. Okay. Seeing a 1. Awesome. Okay, I'm seeing a bunch of. I might have cheated here. I kind of clued that in a little bit. When I talk to other folks, they often think that this is a blocker, and the reason why is, you need to find a logo. You need to go surf through your folders. Where is that? Where's your logo? Which one should you choose? It's blocking the momentum. And to everybody's point, and I kind of like, led with this, is when you upload a logo, one thing they really do is they show your logo, and they pick out your brand colors right away from your logo. So they have some kind of logic. Maybe they figure out, okay, what is the brand color? What is the most obvious color out of this image? And they use that to show you this branded, beautiful invoice of what your invoice you're going to send to your client can look like. And to everybody's point, this was a really eyes light up moment for their team. I got a chance to talk to their former VP of product growth, and exactly what everybody pointed out here, that it is definitely a booster. This is what he said to me. He said, during customer interviews, when people saw this, they said, wow, this is beautiful. It gave them confidence to continue using Wave. So even though at the beginning it might be a little bit of one step backward, at the end the result is they get a leap forward in terms of momentum. So this is an example of are there moments in your product where you can get people to get their eyes to light up right at that very moment with your product, even before they got all the way through with the product. So that's, I think, the very first example of a momentum booster. The second one is like what I call a day one user action. Now, what you want to do is you want to guide users to a quick win as soon as possible. And what I mean by that is, for a lot of B2B and even e-commerce products, getting to the end goal, the end conversion, is very, very hard and takes a lot of commitment. An example with this is Hopper. Hopper is when you put in a destination in this mobile app, it gives you like deals, the best time to go, the best airline to pick based on your ideal location. So if right now, if you wanted to go to Japan or Hawaii, you plug in Japan or Hawaii, and then they'll tell you, okay, if you go on Tuesday on November 13th, you will save $500. Now, their ultimate conversion here requires a lot of commitment, making a purchase, somebody pulling out their credit card. That's a hard commitment, especially within the first day. Imagine downloading this app and somebody telling you, trying to growth hack this and say, Ramley, I want you to get as many purchases on the first day for new users. Now, that might be possible, but it's really, really hard. It requires a lot of commitment. And that's where I got a chance to talk to their former head of growth, head of product, and what he told me was they started focusing on what they call as day one user activities. These are ones that are high value but low effort. An example for Hopper was a feature called watching. When you start watching an app, that signifies to them that they've seen the data that they're more likely to make a purchase. When you watch like a flight from, let's say, Washington D.C. to Hawaii, you're more likely to make a purchase later just because of that. It is something that you can do within the first day, and now they can follow up with you and they can give you those deals to figure that out. So this is a day one activity that leads to end goal conversion. At AppQues, we actually have a very similar day one activity. When you think about AppQues, AppQues creates an easy way to create product tours and tooltips and things like that. Imagine our end goal is really to get you to go live with an experience on your app. So that means like getting your security team. Maybe some of you need to get your engineering team to install the JavaScript. You need to get your legal team or your security team. All these teams need to be involved sometimes, and it might not be possible on the first day. But for us, our day one activity is to get you to install our Chrome extension called an AppQues Builder, because with it, you can start creating tooltips and product tours without even having code installed in your app or your product. What I mean by that is you don't have to own that site. For example, here, I downloaded this extension. I started creating a tooltip for Google. Now, obviously, I don't own the code for Google. But I'm saying here, here's an iconic logo and it's easy to experience. So we found that installing this builder kind of leads to this and makes it easy for folks to get started with it right away. That's really the second one that I want to share with you. The third one is to direct use along the journey. And what I mean by this is nudging them to the next step. An example I can think of, and especially for a lot of apps, what I often miss, it's a missed opportunity, is to celebrate user success. When people achieve something, when they hit that watch or install the AppQues Builder, or for your product, whatever it is, that quick win, once you get people there, celebrate with them and entice them to the next step. Here's an example from Copper. Copper is CRM that's built on top of your on Gmail or Google email. And once you installed it and set it up for your Google Workspace, it says you're live with your Google Workspace. Your CRM can too, and they're celebrating this with confetti, which makes me feel like it's a party, even though it's not, but it feels like it. But they're leading you to the next step, which is to get our extension. They're leading you to install their extension. This is something that we're actually trying to do at AppQues. We don't have something like this right now, but it's really, really powerful to guide people to the next step. Here's another example where it's a slide out where somebody who has used Lucidchart, which is an easy way to create charts, is nudging you to one of their other products, Lucispark, for brainstorming. So there, it says take it for a spin. Here's a new product. You've already mastered Lucidchart. And with all these examples, something's very important is to make sure that context is everything. When somebody wins, whether they've set up something, they invited a team member, really celebrate with them and guide them to the next step. It can be really, really powerful. People are very emotional and they get excited about that. This is the third one. I have two more examples for you. The very fourth one, the second to the last, is to declutter. Break down complex UX into bite-sized portions. How many of you, sometimes onboarding feels like this? How many of you seen this in the 90s, where it's like, oh my goodness, my eyes, it is hurting. What should I look at? Should I look at that bike? Should I look at that car? Should I look at that website or that face to the upper left? There isn't really any focus as to where you should be looking at. particularly users. I mean, this is a little extreme, and I don't expect. I haven't seen an onboarding experience or a first time user experience that is as crazy as this, but it could get very crazy. And what we want to do is make sure to actually remove options. That's kind of backwards thinking for us. Is to one of the most powerful things you can do to accelerate user onboarding and product adoption is to give your users less options. And why this is so powerful is a concept called Hicks law. It's a psychology principle where it says that time it takes to make a decision increases with the number of options. And he found through his research that if there's more options equals more time, which equals to sad users, users who are confused, users who leave. And whenever I go to a restaurant where there's 100 menu items, I pick the one that I'm most comfortable with. But I take that time to really break it apart there. Where you can apply this concept is in a few places. One of them is even in the sign up form is something that you can experiment with, where I've seen more and more often, especially with impatient users, where you show one field at a time when somebody's signing up. There's an example with Canva. This is something called progressive disclosure, where you show one thing first and that leads to the next thing. For example, I put in my email, I click continue, and then you put in the name and the password. This works really well as well. Within your experience, like where you walk them through one important thing at a time. The other stuff is decluttering your onboarding checklist as well. This is an example that we did with AppQs, where we used to have 4 things, but we actually broke it up to two things. The first one only has one item, where one of them's already checked off, and then we moved the 3 other ones to the second checklist, and we saw a stark contrast in terms of the completion rate. In the first example with 4 items, our completion rate for that was 2%. It's something that's really hard, especially with the last step, installing app queues. After when we broke it up, so after somebody's completed the first one, they see the second one, that actually has a 30% completion rate. Something that we have been experimenting with just by breaking it up, declaring the experience and making it easier for folks. I have one last example, and I'll wrap it up within 5 minutes. Discretion with onboarding UX patterns. What I mean by this is often when we think about onboarding, somebody tells you, Ranley, onboarding, and the first thing they think about is product tours. And this is exactly what Trainwell, which is a tool that allows people to create, companies to create training manuals for the employees, did. The target audience are busy small business owners, and their first onboarding experience had a lot of clicks, a lot of product tours, and they found that this hands-on approach was not very, very effective. People completing it and people activating was very low. So what they did was a more subtle approach with their users. They used hotspots. When they click on it, it brings up a video, and people can watch that video, this guide. So it's more contextual. And they found that doubled their activation rate, which brings up this final tip that I have for all of you. Is there's two often, if I had to think about onboarding patterns, UX patterns into 2 buckets. There are the first one, which are active. These are things that, get in the way of your user, and users don't have control over it. Often that's a product tour or a pop-up or a modal. And there are other patterns that you can use for your onboarding, which are passive patterns. These are ones that users have to interact with to see it. And between these two, the question that I get often asked is, which one is better? Active patterns where you are more hands-on, or passive patterns where you get out of the way? And my response to this is it's like asking a user, somebody, if they prefer dogs or cats. Now, there are some users who are dogs, who are like dogs. They're not dogs. Where they're excited, they come up to you, they want to click around, they want to read every onboarding tour that you have, document, and they're happy with that. And there are some users who are like cats, where they're very passive. They will get rid of anything that you get in their face, and they prefer to go through it very, very leisurely at their own time and space. The question that you want to ask yourself is, what type of users do you have? Do you have users who are like dogs or who are like cats? And you do that through experimentation, identifying, are they clicking around this, clicking around the product tour, and maybe that's not the right approach. Where our hotspot is much better. And I want to leave you with this last thought, that it might depend on your user segment. Like an example with a company called Climacell, they actually have both users who are like dogs and cats. And what they did is they segmented the users up front. They found that hobbyists, the first blue button, are more like dogs. They want to click around. They want that hands-on approach. And academics and professionals, on the other hand, are more like cats, where they don't want your help. They want to read through everything. So that's very, very important to segment your users, identify where they're at. I want to wrap up there. I know we only had a few 30 to 40 minutes here to share with everybody. We do, I have created a bunch of other free courses around product adoption, user onboarding, free to play trial. And Greg, thank you for sharing that. You can check it out at Product Adoption Academy. If there are any questions, I'm going to be around here answering questions. My email is ramley@accuse.com. Twitter is @ramleyjohn, and LinkedIn is ramleyjohn. If you have any questions that come up later on, feel free to send me a DM, and make sure to mention that you heard me from DC Startup Week. So thank you very much for everybody. Like I said,
Thanks.
if you have any questions.
This was awesome. I'd love, if folks have questions, just pull yourself off of mute. But I wanted to make two comments. One, I love the dog cat example. It's so true, and I think you really do need to understand what type of user you have and kind of what their intent is when they come in. And the other thing, you had shown a slide for app queues, I believe, where you had broken up that form into, or that checklist into multiple stages. And I ran an experiment with a company, this is a couple of years ago now, where the variant was a form. And it wasn't a super long form, but it was a form. And the experiment, so the control was that the variant was a set of rhetorical questions that also asked for an input. So it was like, do you want to save money on this thing? So they click yes, and then we ask them another question, and we ask them another question. And we call it the getting their head nodding moment. And then we go for the ask. And the conversion rate on that flow, even though we put more of a barrier up, it was roughly the same form at the end, the conversion rate was like 300% higher. And I think that's getting at the same psychology, where you want to break it up into chunks and you want to get that user buy-in. Is that how you're thinking about this?
Yep, 100%. I think breaking down is super, and giving those users less option in the beginning helps them continue on saying cool. Yes.
Questions from the audience. Come off of mute, introduce yourself, and say hi if you have questions. Nobody? Okay. We got one here.
Question.
Hi.
All right. So my company. Oh, is it me? Wait.
Yeah, let's go Rajiv, and then we'll go Macy, and then anybody else.
So my company is an e-commerce company, and part of that flow that you were talking about is we have our customers going back to their email to confirm it, just so we can weed out any like bots that you were saying. But if I've noticed that like my target is a working mom, I know that's just like another step that she has to take. So at what point do we, is there a suggested guide of saying like, okay, we can have like X% of like bots coming to our site just to, take out that blocker that we perceive?
Good question. Yeah, I mean, some of the techniques I've seen work really well. Is what's that called? Where it's weird letters on the screen, and there's like a not. Oh man, I'm CAPTCHA. CAPTCHA, right? A test like that where you can add a little bit of technique there. You can ask a little bit more. Some technical folks have found a way around that where they add a pixel or something like that. I'm not a very technical guy, but there is less intrusive way to remove bots if that's your biggest concern for them. On the other hand, if your concern is like, I want to make sure I'm sending, receipts to the right person. I think in that case, you probably want to verify. You do probably want to verify the email, especially, like important notifications like shipping information, delivery information, things like that. They probably want to achieve that and get it to their inbox. So just it's a trade-off. So I would do an experiment and see if removing it gets you a lot of bots, and that's exactly what we did with that company, Snappa, where Christopher, the CEO, was really concerned about bots, and just like, okay, let's do a split test. Have the sign up form in one and remove it for another one. If you don't, if that's not a possibility for you, I know it's not a clean split test, but let's take it off for a week and see what happens. Do we get a lot of bots? And if you do, then let's stop it back on. Or if you take it off, do people not type in the wrong emails way too many times that they don't get the delivery notifications? So that's how I would approach it.
This is why my drawings always have like.
Thank you. Great suggestion.
All right, we are bumping up on time. We've got time for a very, very quick question, Maisie. If you want to come, let's just keep it nice and short and sweet.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to try to keep it nice and short and sweet. So my question is bounce backs. I pivoted my business about 4 years ago. I used to own the spa here in the DC area for about 27 years, and we took our emails from the spa and infused it in our CRM system. But what is happening, like we were getting so many bounce backs from the emails, and I'm like, I don't know, because I collected these emails when I had my spa through the software system that we used in the spa, but all of a sudden, a lot of it was got a lot of bounce backs. Now I've hired someone to pretty much curate it. So if either of you can recommend maybe an app or something that we could use to maybe throw these email addresses in that can curate it for us, and then we can send them like an opt-in.
Yeah, I would do two things. Maisie, I would do two things. Use zerobounce.com first to weed out the initial batch, and then use Apollo AI to double check. If they're business users, Apollo AI. If they're personal users, Zero Bounce will get rid of most of them. And then make sure that you don't send too many at a time, because if you get too many bounces, your domain is going to become at risk and you won't be able to send
Exactly.
So if we have somebody on the Velocity Growth team, if you send me an email, we're happy to take a really quick look for you. Rami, I don't know if you have any other tips as well.
No, I think those are good ones. Like I've never heard of them, but I think those Zero Bounce, good to know.
Yeah, those are the good ones. Awesome, Ramli, this was fantastic again. Thanks for being such a good, engaging host and a great community here with great questions. Thanks everybody for attending DC Startup Week. Ramli, it's always a pleasure. Good luck with the baby, and we'll cross paths soon. Thank you so much.